And you're live on PM Express. And as indicated by Israel Lai, we will be monitoring the events in Parliament. Just that you know, there's a debate on the report of the Appointments Committee on some 13 nominees in the House, and the House is currently debating as to whether to approve them or not. So we are monitoring events in Parliament as and when necessary. We'll take you there to gauge the mood in Parliament. But tonight, a very important conversation on PM Express as we await the Supreme Court's verdict on the election petition hearing, particularly because of what we witnessed in the aftermath of the 2020 election. Tonight, we're bringing on board the stakeholders and chart a path that will inure to the ultimate interest of the country. So, 2020 election petition, the verdict ensuring national cohesion in a polarized country. And the first business, so let me take you briefly to the case so far in the Supreme Court, because tomorrow, all the parties have closed their cases, and tomorrow the Supreme Court judges will give their verdict on the petition. So the case so far, the first business of the court was to grant unanimously the petitioner's request to amend the petition and correct some minor mistakes that did not affect the substance of the petition. The Supreme Court afterwards dismissed a request for the interrogatories to be served on the Electoral Commission. Now, John Mahama was seeking to get the Electoral Commission chairperson, Jim Mensah, to answer 12 questions which, in their opinion, would have aided the speedy resolution of the trial. But lawyers for Mr. Mahama filed a review application to get the court to review its ruling on the interrogatories. Now, on that occasion, 2 other Supreme Court judges joined the original 7-member panel. You remember that one. Then came the time to call witnesses. Although John Mahama stated in his petition that he was calling 5 witnesses, he ended up calling 3: Johnson Asiedu Nketia, Dr. Michael Pesa-White, and later Rojo Metul-Nuno. The Supreme Court on another occasion rejected an attempt by lawyers for John Mahama to inspect some 6 original documents at the Electoral Commission. Now, then John Mahama closed his case, and the expectation was that the EC and President Akufo-Addo would open their case and call their witnesses. To the surprise of the petitioner, the respondents opted to call no witnesses. Lawyers for John Mahama again proceeded to make a case to the court to compel Madam Jim Mensah to testify. But the court said it cannot compel the EC chairperson to testify against her will. John Mahama's lawyers appealed the ruling of the court, and the court unanimously rejected the review application, saying it had no powers to force witnesses to testify. Now, the petitioner applied to the court to open its case and issue a subpoena to the EC chairperson as a hostile witness. The panel dismissed the application once again. Subsequently, a review application against this ruling was filed in court. An enhanced 9-member panel dismissed the request again that the court reviews its decision not to allow the petitioner to reopen his case and force the EC chairperson to testify. All the parties in this litigation have filed their written closing addresses, and the court will render its judgment on the petition on Thursday, March 4, which is tomorrow. So this is the background to the case. Flag bearer of the NDC in the 2020 presidential election, John Mahama and his party disagreed with the declaration of President Akufo-Addo as winner of the election. On 30th December 2020, John Mahama filed a petition at the Supreme Court seeking an annulment of the 2020 election results as declared, and an order of the court directed at the Electoral Commission to conduct another election between President Akufo-Addo and John Mahama. Tonight, we're looking at how to ensure national cohesion in a polarized country as the Supreme Court gets ready to deliver its verdict. Stay with me. I'm introducing my guest right after the break. My guest tonight, Nana Professor SKB Asante. He's board member, National Peace Council, and is a paramount chief of Asokore Mampong. Sami Jemfi is the National Communications Officer, NDC, and spokesperson of Mahama's legal team. Henry Nana Boache is MPP National Youth Organizer. Professor Ransford Jampo will be joining us later. He's Associate Professor of Political Science, and Ibrahim Tanko Amidu is Executive Director of Star Ghana Foundation. I'm grateful, gentlemen, that you all joined. Let me start with you, Nana Boakye. What have you been telling your supporters ahead of the Supreme Court verdict tomorrow?
Hello?
Hello, Nana Boakye. I'm asking what you've been discussing with your supporters ahead of the Supreme Court's verdict tomorrow.
Aisha, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Nana.
Good, good. Yes, I was saying that, yes, indeed, we have engaged our party structures. First of all, good evening to you and your cherished viewers. We have engaged our party structures right from the polling station to the constituency level, national, to the, even before then to the regional level as well. And we've been telling them, we've gone through this before. This is probably the second time we are testing Article 64, so this is not new. And what we have said is that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. What they say, you may disagree, but you have to accept, and you have to do that in a very decorous manner. So you recall that in 2013, His Excellency, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, sat in the court for almost about 8 months. And after the verdict, he engaged the media, engaged the entire nation, and then said that, yes, he disagreed with the verdict. However, he accepts the verdict from the Supreme Court, and he's not going to go for a review. So we have engaged our people that tomorrow, whatever happens, we believe in the rule of law. This will further deepen the democratic tenet of this country. And we've told our party structures, yes, if it goes our way, we can jubilate, but in a very moderate style. If it doesn't go your way, you only have to embrace it, and then you move on. So we have engaged our party supporters, and the Supreme Court is the final arbiter.
Now, Sabi Jemfi is the communications director of communication officer of the NDC. Sami, let me gauge your preparedness for tomorrow's verdict by the Supreme Court and how you are psyching your supporters for the big event.
Thank you very much, and let me say good evening to my other colleagues on the line and our cherished viewers. The National Democratic Congress and our leader, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, are lawful, citizens of this country. And for that matter, we believe in the rule of law and will not do anything that can jeopardize the peace and stability that we are enjoying as a country. So tomorrow we'll be in court. We'll go and hear what the decision of the court is on the election petition that we, brought before it a couple of months ago. We are satisfied with how the proceedings have gone, particularly the effort that our lawyers have put into the case. And so we know that whichever way the decision goes, people of this country and all objective minds who have followed this case keenly will not be in any doubt of the truth. We know that people already appreciate the truth in this matter. And the truth is that candidate Akufo-Addo was not validly elected as president of Ghana in the 2020 presidential election. And so to that extent, no verdict, no outcome will, surprise us or make us want. But of course, if the decision is given and we have issues with that, we will exercise our right by criticizing it in accordance with our freedom of expression. And where our lawyers think that it is necessary to take a review of the decision, we will do so. We have stated that we will pursue this matter to its logical conclusion. And so tomorrow is the day for the judges to pronounce judgment. We'll be in court and hear what they have to say. And then the petitioner and the party will evaluate the decision and take a decision on our next course of action. But the country can be rest assured that the NDC will not do anything to undermine the peace and stability of this country that we are enjoying.
Thankfully, Nana Professor SKB Asante is on with us. The National Peace Council in the last few days have been appealing to all the parties to strictly adhere to the ruling of the Supreme Court, regardless of who wins or loses in the yet to be delivered judgment. And you are actually appealing to them to refrain from any activity that may disturb the peace of the country. Are you picking any signal yet which has necessitated this statement? Hello, Professor.
Hello. Our statement derives from the fact that as an organization established by Parliament to provide mechanisms for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts and the building of sustainable peace, we have always been concerned about the possibility of a conflict during or after elections. And therefore, over the years, we have managed to persuade presidential candidates to subscribe to a public declaration of peace before, during, and after election. We did that in 2012, 2016, and 2020. And also in the before the 2020 elections, there were two other important events. There was the passage of the Vigilantism Act, and also the dialogue between the NPP and NDC, which resulted in a code of conduct and a roadmap for the eradication of political vigilantism and related political offenses. So, having gone through this process, we are, of course, sensitive to any fallout from the announcement, from the pronouncement of the Supreme Court tomorrow, which might threaten the peace. Any development which is a threat to the peace is a matter of concern for us, and we are only being proactive when we issue that statement, following the various developments which have taken place over the years towards ensuring peace and our democratic governance throughout the after the elections. We believe that in any country which subscribes the rule of law, there are various procedures for resolving disputes. And ours prescribe for a petition to the Supreme Court or to the High Court, and after the declaration by the various courts, then there's an obligation to accept the ruling, not in the sense of agreeing with the resolution, but accepting it as a final pronouncement on the dispute and as a basis for going forward with our democratic system. We are not saying that everybody should agree with the actual legal reasoning of the Supreme Court, but there should be no activity which threatens the peace of the country thereafter.
Let's talk about the Accra Peace Declaration, in which the two major political parties inter-ally undertook to restrain their supporters from resorting to violence in the aftermath of the elections. That roadmap was not followed, considering the pockets of violence that characterized the aftermath. Some say, as an arbiter, you could have done better in insisting that the political parties follow the plan.
Well, you see, we have a mediatory role, and we did what we could within our mandate to prevent peace and even to suggest ways of resolving conflict. But in the long run, the two parties are the main players. And we cannot be held responsible for any outbreak of violence. There are various agencies of the state which are responsible for that, the security forces and so forth. The National Peace Council has no enforcement powers. We can only advise, we can only appeal, and we can only hope that our appeal prevails. And that's what we are doing again. So we cannot be held responsible for the outbreak of violence because we were not in a position to actually enforce peace. There are other agencies which are responsible for that. That's a complete misreading of the role of the National Peace Council.
Well, let me bring in Mr. Tanko Amadu here because you played a major role in getting both MPP and NDC in 2020 to publicly subscribe to a code of conduct and a roadmap on the eradication of political vigilantism and also election-related violence on the grounds that they are inimical to Ghana's democratic system. Are you satisfied with how the political parties themselves have conducted themselves following their subscription?
Well, of course, we regret all the incidents of violence. And we regret all the incidents of violence. And of course, we are not happy that these happened. But then we don't give up. You know, the process has not ended. Eventually, there was a petition to the Supreme Court. And therefore, we want to be sure that that also does not give rise to further conflict.
Mr. Tanko Amadu, what's your own verdict of how the political parties have carried themselves after subscribing to this code of conduct? Hello, Ms. Amadu.
Yes,
Kindly unmute for me. Kindly unmute for me.
Yes, I have unmuted.
Great. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so thank you very much. Good evening to you, my colleague panelists, and to your viewers. I think to a very large extent, we are quite satisfied with what has happened right from the beginning of the process to where we are now. But we should also say that one life lost is one too many. One incidence of violence is one too many. One infraction of the law is one too many. So the fact that these occurred, the fact that this occurred, are regrettable, and I think provide a basis for us to learn lessons and see how we can improve. We are an evolving democracy, and I think that after each election, all the stakeholders need to review what has taken place and to see how we can strengthen the mechanisms and the processes to ensure that we do not, always sit on tenterhooks and have to spend resources appealing to people to do the right thing. So we think that there are areas that can be improved upon, but there are also areas that have worked quite well. Thank you.
Great. And before I come to you, Nana Boachi, to pick your reaction or your explanation to how people are concerned about the fact that the two major political parties have not, they've not conformed to the rules that you signed. There's some breaking news just coming in. Let me just take that. This is coming from the Office of the President, and it is titled Retirement from the Audit Service. Dear Mr. Domelevu, the attention of the President of the Republic has been drawn to records and documents made available to this office by the Audit Service that indicate that your date of birth is 1st June 1960 and that in accordance with Article 1991 of the Constitution, your date of retirement as Auditor General was 1st June 2020. Based on this information, the President is of the view that you have formally left office. Mr. Johnson Ekuamwa Asiedu will continue to act as Auditor General until the President appoints a substantive Auditor General. The President thanks you for your service to the nation and wishes you the very best in your future endeavors. And it is signed by Nana Bedi Asante, Secretary to the President, and it's to Mr. Daniel Yao Domelevu. So this is just coming from the office of the President. And Professor Jampo, if you're on the line, let me quickly pick your thoughts on this one coming from the President. Hello, Professor Jampo. All right. So if Professor Jampo is not on yet, let me go back to
Hello.
Hi, Professor Jampo. You're on PM Express.
Yes.
And I know you are not here to speak on the Auditor General's issue, but this is a letter coming from the President. I want you to pick your reaction on this letter coming from the office of the President.
Well, like you rightly said, I mean, this is just an impromptu something that would have to be read and properly interrogated before any substantive position can be.
But you've been following the issue, the back and forth.
Yes, but if it is true that the man, per his own date of birth, should have retired around June 2020, then I'm sure he just took his leave and he's been reminded that you've already retired and so you are not going back. I mean, it depends on who is looking at the records, but if these are the records, there should be an end to public service. If he's reached his retirement age, so be it. It's just that the circumstances that led to he being asked to proceed on leave were quite murky, and they've raised a lot of issues among civil society organizations. I've raised several issues about those circumstances and all that. But if it is true that indeed he was born around June and his retiring period, was around 2020 June, so be it. But we should be careful as a people that, as a nation, how we go about, some of these things, because if you don't take care, there will be certain wrong precedents.
Okay.
The circumstances, in my view, that led to he being asked. In fact, generally, some of us have argued that he was technically ousted and all that. So, of course, we knew that he wasn't going to come back again to continue with his duty as the Auditor General. But regardless of this, like I said earlier, some of us are concerned about how he was ordered to proceed on leave, and it wasn't proper.
Okay.
But if he's gotten to the retirement age and he's been reminded, I think so be it.
Okay. Before I bring you in on the Supreme Court, let me quickly pick this thought run this by Nana Boakye. Nana Boakye, people are concerned that the roadmap that you signed yourself to abide by the rules of engagement, you did not conduct yourself in that manner. How do you explain that?
Aisha, I wish you would point out to certain particulars. I am not aware of the particular issue you are speaking to, which portion and which of the roadmap or which of the issues that we signed to have we breached.
The fact that you would control your supporters in the aftermath of the elections.
But I think that we have controlled our supporters. We have not. Don't forget, Aisha, we won the elections, and then we haven't acted.
That did not stop the clashes, between yourself and your opponents. The NDC and MPP supporters clashed in some areas. Remember?
No, but that is why I'm saying that, Aisha, I think you need to be more particular, because don't forget that most of the footages that we saw our brothers from the other side, NDC, they were agreed by certain decisions, especially the footages we saw from Techiman South. They were actually engaged in some aggressive engagement with the military and the police as well. So I don't recall in any situation where we as NPP, we engaged aggressively with the NDC. I don't recall. And don't forget that it was our brothers from the other side who also took to the streets demonstrating. And at some point in time, some of them had to even be whisked away by the police. So that is why I'm requesting for some particulars, because as far as I'm concerned, for the New Patriotic Party, we have conducted ourselves very well. The NDC lost the elections, and then they felt that, yes, indeed, one of the democratic instruments you can use to express yourself is hitting the streets. But they did that some way. SSS.
They accused your government of putting vigilante people, party supporters into the main security apparatus.
I think this will continue to remain an allegation, and they have not really provided any evidence to that effect. It appears that they've always been saying these things, and then we've just staffed, the security services with our party people. I mean, they keep saying it, but then no evidence. So I just would want to leave it at that level, that they just want to peddle these things on the arena of allegations. I mean, just throw it about, and then that is it. But for me, and then the question you asked, and then the roadmap, I believe that we have conducted ourselves very well. And as I even told you, we have even engaged our party structures, right from the polling station to the constituency level, to the regional level, to the national level, that no matter how the verdict will go, if it goes our favor, we need to make sure that, yes, jubilate, but it must be moderate. It must not be an aggressive jubilation where you would also incur maybe some, wrath from the opposite side. And even if we also lose out, right, you should also engage in anything. You need to conduct yourself very well. And you have to embrace the verdict. You may disagree with it. So I think that for us, as a New Patriotic Party, and then our members, we have really spoken to our members. We have conducted ourselves very well. Aisha, if there are any particulars or if there are any issues you want to point out, that is fine, I can address. But generally, I think that we have conducted ourselves very well. And I mentioned that this probably will be the second time we are traveling this path. And for me, it's victory for democracy. For me, it's victory for rule of law in Ghana, that if you are aggrieved by the outcome of any elections, it is rule of law, not rule of gun.
Okay.
And I am happy that this is not the first and the second time. So I think that tomorrow we will have a very peaceful atmosphere after the judgment, and I believe that. And then I also listened to my brother, Sami Jemfi. I mean, it was a good call. Yes, they would also accept the verdict, but then if there's a need for them to criticize, and even if there's a need for them to also even go for a review, it is within their right. So for me, both parties have expressed, to the whole nation that we are ready to accept the verdict. But then if there are issues, we can also comment, we can criticize, but we criticize within the, you need to be decorous in your comments. That is
okay.
it.
Sami Jemfi, what's your own explanation to the perception out there that you go sign a declaration and you do not abide by the rules?
We do what? Can you come again with your
There's
question?
a perception out there that the declaration, the roadmap that you signed, the peace pact, you've not abided by the rules of the game.
What specific provision of that peace pact have we violated?
To avoid violence after the elections.
And have we engaged in any violence?
After the elections, we saw pockets of violence. I mean, between your...
Our members have not engaged in any act of violence after the declaration of the 2020 presidential election results. Our members exercise their constitutional right to demonstrate. And so in several parts of the country, people came together to protest against the flawed verdict that was declared by the returning officer. They did so in accordance with their constitutional right. And so they were not engaging in any violent act. Most of the violent things we saw that I'm sure you are referring to were the effective, actions of our security agencies in managing those peaceful demonstrations, that led to some of those unfortunate things that we saw on our screen. And so if our security agencies will act professionally, and apply a force that is commensurate with the risk or threat they are confronted with at any given time, then I'm not sure we are going to have any problems. But when people think that citizens should not exercise their constitutional right to demonstrate, and that they will intimidate, frustrate, or brutalize them if they do so, then we are going to have such things. And so we are a peaceful party, we remain a peaceful party, and we will continue to act in ways that preserve the peace and stability we are enjoying as a country. We bet this fourth Republican democracy. It is for that reason that the 1982 Constitution is signed by our founder, Flight Lieutenant General John Rawlings. And so we will not do anything to undermine the peace and stability of this country, but we will exercise our rights guaranteed under the 1982 Constitution, and that includes expressing our opinion, it includes embarking on demonstrations and all that. All these things are rights that have been guaranteed under the 1992 Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, and which we are all bound by.
Professor Jampo, you want a ruling that will provide a roadmap that will address electoral challenges identified in the 2020 general elections. How urgent is this call?
Thank you. I think over the years, this is the second time we have an election petition, and also since 1993, every election has provided us with an opportunity to reflect on our electoral processes, and we've made several improvements, on the processes. So we want to talk about the time when we were using opaque ballot boxes, when after the 1993 elections, 92 elections, in 1996, there were reforms, and we said, let's have transparent ballot boxes. This is just one example, but the processes, electoral processes, have undergone several changes and several improvements and all that. So every election year, after every election year, we get the opportunity to fine-tune our electoral processes to make sure that it delivers results that will be acceptable to all. And if you look at the 2012, 2013 election petition, after that election petition, the ruling that it was
Hello, Professor Jampo. Okay, so I think we've lost Professor Jampo there. We'll try and get Professor Jampo back because he's making some valid submissions on expectations from the Supreme Court judges. But Mr. Tanko Amidu, what do you hope to see tomorrow from the parties to the petition hearing after the verdict?
Thank you very much. I think what we expect, has been said by my colleague panelists. I think one is an acceptance of the verdict. And as you rightly said, acceptance does not really mean agreement, so you will accept, but you may not agree with the reasoning and may take other measures to seek redress. The second we are expecting, which is to ensure that their pronouncements after the verdict do not incite or provoke, unrest or violence, that they are able to exercise control, if I could use that word, over their followers and sympathizers to ensure that people do not take the law into their own hands if they feel aggrieved or disagree with the verdict. And I think that it also goes, to the media, those aligned with the parties and those that say maybe they are neutral, that the way we report the verdict, the way we interpret it, could make or unmake or mar the peace of the country. So that's generally our expectation from tomorrow.
Okay, and I'm glad you talked about the media aspect. What role does the media play? What are the marching orders as we go into the verdict by the Supreme Court tomorrow? I'll take a break on PM Express. When I return, okay, I'm told Professor Jampo is back. I'll take your submission before I take that break. Professor Jampo, earlier you were talking about how important it is for the Supreme Court to provide a roadmap to deal with some of our electoral challenges.
Yes, so I was saying that after if you look at the Supreme Court ruling during the 2013 election petition, the judges and the judgment that they gave were essentially a marching orders to the Electoral Commission to undertake an extensive review of the electoral processes. If you look at the justice, what Justice Atuguba, for instance, said, he said so many things that were profound that after the judgment, you didn't need anybody to impress upon you again to put things in right order. And so after the judgment, I remember the Electoral Commission itself wrote to about 38 stakeholders calling on them to submit proposals for electoral reforms. At that time, I used to coordinate. I was working at the IEA, and I coordinated a program called the Ghana Political Parties Program. And we sent about 25 proposals for electoral reform. Subsequently, the Electoral Commission constituted an electoral reforms committee that collated and synthesized all these proposals for electoral reforms and submitted, the electoral reforms proposal to the Electoral Commission. And about 90% of these proposals were accepted, and some of them have been used to improve upon our electoral processes. Now, if you look at what has happened in the 2021 election petition, and a certain impression has been created in the minds of many people that, you see, even though it is a common knowledge that not all went well with the electoral processes, two of the court rulings have painted an impression in the minds of some people that, well, after all, it wasn't all that bad, and if you don't take care, somebody will tell you that all went well, with the electoral process. But I know that there were challenges. There were challenges, for instance, with even the collation processes. There were challenges, there were mistakes in the declaration of results or the results that were announced and all that. All these things would have to be looked at again. And so my point is that I am looking forward to a certain ruling from the Supreme Court that would also delve into some of the challenges that plagued the conduct of the 2020 elections, so that they could make pronouncement on them and also give marching orders to the Electoral Commission to go work with its stakeholders to improve the electoral processes so that those challenges may not recur again. So I'm looking at a ruling that will say that, yes, the chairperson was not allowed to be cross-examined or to be interrogated. Nevertheless, we are aware that there were challenges with the electoral, with the 2020 elections, and some of these challenges were some of the reasons why that the petitioners went to court and all that. And so once there is an admission that there were some challenges, then some marching orders could be given so that then the Electoral Commission can work with all its stakeholders for the purposes of fine-tuning the process. But if this does not happen, then in my view, it will be difficult. Then we would miss the opportunity to fine-tune our electoral processes and to ensure that the challenges that plagued it in the 2020 elections do not recur. And if we don't deal with those challenges, then future elections may be quite problematic, because you cannot go into elections knowing that these are the problems that saddle the previous ones and they still haven't been resolved. I mean, it would put people unnecessarily on a defensive, and they may want to take the laws into their hands in a manner that may undermine our peace. And so I am looking forward to that kind of ruling.
Okay.
That would also delve into the need for us to deal with the challenges that saddled the 2020 elections.
Right. I'll take a break on PM Express. When I return, we'll be looking at what role the media plays in all of this. Stay with me. I'm coming right back. Welcome back to PM Express. We've been talking about the ruling that we're expecting the Supreme Court to give on the 2020 election petition. We've been hearing from some of the stakeholders involved in this, and we've been hearing some fresh assurances from the two major political parties, the NPP and NDC, who say they would abide by any ruling or whatever the outcome of the election petition hearing is, and that is quite refreshing. Professor SKB, in your statement, you appealed to the media, the social and political commentators, to be circumspect in their reports. And of course, Ms. Amidu spoke a bit about it, and you say after the Supreme Court's delivery of justice, they should be, in their discussion of the issues, they must be circumspect. What exactly are your expectations of the media, for instance?
Well, I really cannot say quite categorically what my expectations are, because I do not know what they plan to do. But our appeal is that while they have the right to express disagreement with the reasoning of the court, it is important that they refrain from activities, or rather it is important that the commentary does not incite violence. I don't suppose they want to do that. So if I have any expectation, my expectation is that the press would play their role as an important department of state, which has been imbued with considerable powers and freedom under the Constitution, and that they will ensure that the constitutional structure of our country, the democratic structure, is not undermined by, any sort of incendiary commentary. There has been a much debate on the scope of media in these matters, and I'm very much aware that this is a matter which is very delicate. I was very much involved in the formulation of the Constitution. So I'm very much aware of their freedom which has been guaranteed under the Constitution. Nevertheless, we have a major democratic edifice which can be pulled apart by so many factors. And we are concerned that the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision should not give rise to any threat to the peace of this country. That's from the point of view of the National Peace Council. But I'm very much aware that, jurists and academic men, women around the world can subject a decision of the Supreme Court to a critique, a reasoned, constructive critique. Some of the points made by Professor Jampo about, improving the electoral system to be a subject matter of a critique. That is quite legitimate. But we are concerned about anything which will incite violence. We all saw what happened in the United States recently when there was a storming of the Capitol, the joint meeting of the Senate and the House of Representatives. And it was a very bad example to the whole world. The whole democratic world condemned it. We don't want anything similar to happen in this country. While I have I would like to point out that I'm not the paramount chief of Asokore Mampong. I'm the paramount chief of Asante Asokore. Asokore Mampong is my traditional brother's chiefdom.
Okay.
And I think there was also a confusion about some of my credentials. There was a confusion with my late namesake, SKB Asante. But these are matters which are peripheral. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. But I also want to find out from you just this one. What are you satisfied with the assurances from both parties tonight?
Yes, I'm reasonably satisfied. The question is whether they will be, of course, implemented. The assurances are satisfactory. Thank you.
I'm grateful for your time. Nana Professor Asante, he's board member of the National Peace Council and paramount chief of, he says, Asante Asokore. I'm grateful for that correction. Sami Jemfi is National Communications Officer, NDC, and spokesperson of Mahama's legal team. Henry Nana Boache is an MPP's National Youth Organizer. Professor Ransford Jampo, Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Ghana, and Ibrahim Tanko Amedo is Executive Director of Star Ghana Foundation. I'm really grateful for your time, gentlemen. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Do enjoy the rest of our programs.